A millionaire sees his pregnant ex-wife standing at his own wedding reception, and the whole room stops cold. He thinks she came to ruin his big day, but the truth hits harder than anything he's ever faced. She whispers that the baby she carries might be his. But that's not even the shocking part. She didn't come for love. She came to warn him. Someone at the wedding is planning to take his fortune, destroy his name, and use the people he loves as bait. As secrets explode and danger closes in, everything he thought was safe begins to crumble right in front of him. If one moment can destroy a life, can one truth save it? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the marble floors of the Hale Innovation Center's glass atrium. Soft classical music floated through the air as photographers weaved through clusters of Silicon Valley's elite, their camera flashes adding to the sparkle of champagne glasses and diamond jewelry. Isaac Hale adjusted his ivory bow tie for the 100th time, the silk material of his custom tuxedo suddenly feeling too tight around his neck. He smiled and nodded mechanically as another well-wisher offered congratulations, though he couldn't quite remember their name or position. Was it another board member, a politician from Veronica's circles? The faces had started to blur together hours ago. Such a perfect match, the woman was saying, her red-painted lips curved in a practiced smile. Veronica is absolutely radiant. Thank you, Isaac replied automatically, his eyes scanning the crowded reception. His bride-to-be was holding court near the champagne fountain, her designer white gown catching the light as she laughed with her equally polished bridesmaids. She looked exactly like the society page photo she'd surely become tomorrow, poised, confident, and completely in her element. So why did he feel so empty? If you'll excuse me, he murmured, stepping away from yet another conversation about merger possibilities and political connections. He needed air, just a moment to steady himself before the ceremony. This was what success looked like, he reminded himself. This was the perfect strategic partnership, combining his tech empire with Veronica's political dynasty. It made sense on paper. He reached for a glass of water from a passing server, turning toward the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the San Francisco skyline. That's when he saw her. Allison. She stood near the back doors in a simple navy dress that skimmed over her rounded belly, one hand resting protectively over where their child grew. Their child. The thought hit him like a physical blow, making his fingers tighten around the water glass. Time seemed to slow as their eyes met across the crowded atrium. There was no accusation in her gaze, no anger, just a deep sadness, mixed with something urgent that made his chest tighten. She looked softer than he remembered, her honey-brown hair falling in gentle waves around her shoulders instead of the practical ponytail she'd often worn during their marriage. The pregnancy added a glow to her skin that made his throat close up with emotions he thought he'd buried months ago. Isaac. A sharp voice cut through his daze. He turned to find one of Veronica's uncles, a state senator, trying to get his attention. About that campaign contribution we discussed. I apologize, but I need to step away for a moment, Isaac said, barely registering the man's disappointed frown as he made his way through the crowd. Each step toward Allison felt simultaneously too fast and too slow, like walking through a dream. She didn't move as he approached, though her fingers pressed a little more firmly against her belly, a protective gesture that made his heart ache. Up close, he could see the faint shadows under her eyes, partially hidden by makeup, but visible to someone who had once known every detail of her face. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly, though without real conviction. The words felt hollow even as he spoke them. "We need to talk, Isaac." Her voice was soft but steady, carrying the same gentle strength he'd always admired. "Before you say I do. It's important." He glanced back at the reception, at Veronica holding court among San Francisco's elite like she was born for it. In many ways, she was. But Allison's presence made all of that carefully constructed glamour seem suddenly artificial, like a movie set that looked perfect until you touched the props and found they were just painted cardboard. "There's nothing to talk about," he said, but even he could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "The wedding starts in less than an hour." 30 minutes, she corrected gently. "Just give me 5 of them, please." She gestured toward a quiet hallway that led to the building's executive offices. His offices. The music grew fainter with each step they took away from the reception, like they were walking out of one world and into another. Isaac followed her, trying to ignore how natural it felt to walk beside her again, how his hand instinctively moved to hover near her lower back like it had countless times during their marriage. The reception sounds faded behind them, replaced by the soft click of Allison's sensible heels on the polished floor. She moved carefully, one hand still resting on her pregnant belly, and Isaac found himself matching his pace to hers without thinking. It was muscle memory from a life he'd walked away from, or thought he had. They passed beneath the last crystal chandelier, leaving the sparkle and shine of his wedding reception behind. In the dimmer light of the hallway, everything felt more real somehow, more honest. The hollow feeling in his chest grew stronger with each step, like his body was trying to tell him something his mind wasn't ready to acknowledge. Behind them, the music played on, celebrating a union that suddenly felt as fragile as the crystal catching the light above the dance floor. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also truth, and Isaac found himself following Allison toward it, drawn by the same quiet gravity that had first pulled them together years ago. The hallway's dim lighting cast long shadows as Isaac and Allison moved away from the reception's glittering atmosphere. Their footsteps echoed against the marble floors, creating a rhythm that seemed to match Isaac's racing heartbeat. Here, away from the crowd and cameras, the air felt heavier with unspoken words. Allison stopped near a tall window overlooking the city. The late afternoon sun caught the tears threatening at the corners of her eyes, making them shine like the crystals they'd left behind in the ballroom. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders in that familiar way that told Isaac she was gathering her courage. "I'm 4 months pregnant," she said softly, her hand still resting on her belly. "And before you ask, yes, I'm certain about the timing." Isaac felt the floor tilt beneath his feet. 4 months. His mind raced back, calculating dates with the precision that had made him successful in tech. 4 months ago. That night, he whispered, his voice rough, after the charity gala. Allison nodded, a sad smile touching her lips. "When we thought we could fix everything with one conversation and a bottle of wine." The memory washed over him. Their chance meeting at the gala, the familiar way they'd fallen into conversation, how easy it had been to believe they could recapture what they'd lost. They'd talked until dawn, sharing hopes and regrets, making promises neither of them had kept. "But that's impossible," Isaac protested, running a hand through his carefully styled hair. "We were careful. You're on—" He trailed off, remembering suddenly that she'd mentioned switching medications that month. "The new anti-anxiety medication interfered with my birth control," Allison explained gently. "I didn't know until later. I have the doctor's confirmation if you want to see it. But Isaac—" She touched his arm lightly, drawing his scattered attention back to her face. "I didn't come here to disrupt your wedding or make demands." Isaac stared at her hand on his arm, remembering how natural such touches had once been between them. Now it felt like a burn, a reminder of everything he'd walked away from. "Then why did you come?" Allison reached into her small purse and pulled out a silver flash drive. The sight of it seemed incongruous against her simple navy dress, like a piece of his tech world invading the softness that had always surrounded her. "Because someone is planning to hurt you," she said, her voice dropping even lower. "And despite everything, I couldn't let that happen without warning you." Isaac's eyes narrowed, his tech CEO instincts kicking in. "What are you talking about?" "There are files on this drive," Allison explained, holding it out to him. "Financial records, emails, plans. Someone close to you is orchestrating something big, something that's supposed to happen during the wedding. They're going to try to destroy you, Isaac, both financially and in the public eye." He didn't take the drive immediately, suspicion warring with the trust he'd once placed in her absolutely. "How did you get this information?" "You know I still work with the domestic violence support group," she said. "One of my clients works as a cleaner in an office building downtown. She found some printed documents in a recycling bin and recognized your name. She brought them to me because—" Allison paused, swallowing hard. "Because she remembered the photo of us on my desk, from before." Isaac's hand moved unconsciously toward the drive, then stopped. "This could be manipulation," he said, more to himself than to her. "You show up here, pregnant, with mysterious evidence of a conspiracy." "You're right," Allison agreed, surprising him. "It could be. I considered how this would look, showing up like this. That's why I'm not asking you to believe me right now." She pressed the flash drive into his palm, closing his fingers around it. "I'm just asking you to look at the files, that's all." The metal felt warm from her hand, a tiny weight that somehow seemed heavier than it should. Isaac stared at their joined hands, remembering how she'd always been able to read him, to know what he needed before he did. The thought sent a chill through him, because she was right about that too. If she'd demanded he believe her, he would have dismissed everything immediately. "Why?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Why go to all this trouble, after how things ended between us?" Allison's free hand moved to her belly again, that protective gesture that kept drawing his eye. "Because despite everything that happened, despite all the ways we hurt each other, you're still the first person I think of when something good happens, or when something bad happens, or when I'm scared." Her voice caught slightly. "And I'm scared now, Isaac, not just for you, but for what might happen to everyone who depends on you if this plan succeeds." Before Isaac could respond, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out to find a message from Veronica. "Where are you? The photographer wants pictures with my family. Don't keep them waiting." The words on the screen seemed to bring reality crashing back in. In less than an hour, he was supposed to be getting married. There were 300 guests waiting. Photographers, caterers, Veronica's politically connected family. "I should go," he said, slipping the drive into his jacket pocket. Its weight seemed to pull at him, like a stone in his pocket trying to drag him under. Allison nodded, already stepping back, creating distance between them. "Just look at the files," she repeated softly. "That's all I'm asking." Another message buzzed on his phone, this time with multiple question marks after his name. Isaac started, then stopped, caught between two worlds, the glittering future he'd planned and the past he'd never fully left behind. "Go," Allison said gently. "They're waiting for you." She turned away first, her navy dress swishing softly against the marble floor. Isaac watched her walk toward the building's side exit, one hand still resting on her belly. Their child, he reminded himself with a jolt that felt like electricity through his chest. The weight of the flash drive seemed to grow heavier with each step she took away from him. His phone buzzed a third time, more insistent than before. Isaac pulled it out, seeing Veronica's name flash across the screen, the urgency clear in her messages. He looked back towards the reception, where his carefully planned future waited. But his hand stayed pressed against his jacket pocket, where the flash drive rested like a secret, burning against his chest. Isaac's footsteps echoed through the empty hallway as he hurried toward his private office. His heart pounded against his ribs, each beat seeming to match the rhythm of his dress shoes on the polished floor. The sounds of the wedding reception, the music, the laughter, the clinking glasses grew fainter with each step. His office stood as a stark contrast to the celebration happening just yards away. While the atrium sparkled with crystal chandeliers and wedding decorations, his workspace remained exactly as he'd left it that morning, orderly, pristine, and most importantly, secure. The heavy wooden door clicked shut behind him, and he turned the lock with trembling fingers. For a moment, he just stood there, leaning against the door. The flash drive felt like it was burning a hole in his pocket. Part of him wanted to dismiss everything Allison had said, to walk back to the reception and proceed with the carefully orchestrated wedding as planned. But he couldn't shake the earnestness in her eyes, the gentle way she'd asked him to simply look. 5 minutes, he muttered to himself, moving to his desk. 5 minutes to prove this is nothing. His computer hummed to life, the blue glow illuminating his face in the dim office. Isaac inserted the flash drive, watching as the file directory populated his screen. His throat tightened as he saw dozens of folders, each meticulously labeled with dates and subject lines. The first folder contained emails, hundreds of them. As Isaac began reading, his hands grew cold. The messages detailed systematic plans to access his company's most valuable intellectual property. There were discussions about patent applications, proprietary software architecture, and research and development timelines. But what made his blood run cold was seeing familiar names attached to these exchanges. "No," he whispered, scrolling faster. "This can't be right." He opened a spreadsheet labeled Financial Projections. The document laid out a detailed timeline for systematically draining his company's assets, disguised as legitimate business expenses and investments. The precision of the plan was chilling. Someone with intimate knowledge of his company's operations had crafted this. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Veronica. He ignored it. Instead, he clicked on a video file. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Security camera footage from what he recognized as the lobby of his biggest competitor's corporate headquarters. The timestamp showed a date from 3 weeks ago. His breath caught as he watched Veronica walk into frame, dressed in one of her signature designer suits. She shook hands with James Martinez, CEO of Rival Tech Solutions, before they disappeared into an elevator together. God, Isaac breathed, running his hands through his carefully styled hair. How did I miss this? More videos followed. Veronica meeting with other executives, having lunch with corporate lawyers, entering buildings that housed known industrial espionage firms. Each clip was like another nail in the coffin of his trust. But the final folder hit him hardest. It contained marriage documents, not their current ones, but drafts that had been revised multiple times. Each version contained increasingly sophisticated language about shared intellectual property rights and asset division. These weren't love letters. They were battle plans. One email exchange particularly stood out. It was between Veronica and her father's attorney. Once the marriage is official, we'll have legal standing to access everything. The prenup he insisted on actually works in our favor. It specifically mentions shared rights to intellectual property developed during the marriage. All we need is proof that the development happened after the wedding date, and we can claim it was collaborative work. The response: "Brilliant strategy, V. Your father would be proud. This will make the hostile takeover much cleaner." Isaac sat back in his chair, feeling like all the air had been sucked from the room. The evidence was overwhelming, methodically documented, and utterly damning. The woman he was about to marry had orchestrated an elaborate plan to destroy everything he'd built. But worse than the betrayal was the realization that he'd been so blind. How many warning signs had he ignored? How many times had he dismissed small inconsistencies because they didn't fit the narrative he wanted to believe? His phone buzzed again, more urgently this time. A string of messages from Veronica. "Where are you? The photographer is waiting. Everyone is asking questions. Isaac, this is completely unprofessional." He stared at the messages, seeing them in a completely new light. Every word seemed calculated now, designed to manipulate and control. And in less than 30 minutes, he was supposed to stand before hundreds of people and pledge his life to this woman. The thought made him physically ill. But beyond his own fate, he thought about his employees, hundreds of people who depended on his company for their livelihoods. He thought about the projects they were developing, innovations that could genuinely help people. All of it would be destroyed if he went through with this wedding. And then there was Allison. Allison, who had come to warn him despite everything that had happened between them. Allison, who was carrying their child. Allison, who had always seen through his defenses to the truth of things. Isaac closed the laptop with shaking hands. The weight of what he'd discovered pressed down on him like a physical force. In trying to secure his future, he'd nearly handed everything over to someone who meant to destroy it all. And now he had mere minutes to decide how to stop it. His phone buzzed one final time, a message from his best man. 10 minutes until you need to be in position at the altar. Where are you? The countdown was on. In his mind, he could picture the scene in the atrium. Hundreds of guests seated, photographers poised, Veronica probably fixing her veil one last time. All the pieces of a perfect society wedding, ready to become a perfect trap. The elevator ride back to the reception floor felt like descending into a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. Isaac's heart pounded against his ribs as the numbers ticked down. Everything looked different now, tainted by what he'd discovered. The polished chrome of the elevator walls, the subtle music playing overhead, even the expensive silk of his ivory tuxedo. It all seemed like props in an elaborate deception. The doors opened to reveal the continued splendor of his almost wedding. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting rainbow prisms across the marble floors. Champagne flowed freely as photographers circulated, documenting what should have been the society event of the year. The air was thick with the scent of roses and lilies from the elaborate floral arrangements that had cost a small fortune. And there, in the center of it all, was Veronica. She stood posed with a group of guests, her designer wedding gown catching the light like freshly fallen snow. Her laugh tinkled through the air as she touched the arm of a prominent senator, her head tilted at that perfect angle she always managed in photos. Isaac watched her, really watched her, and saw what he'd been blind to before. Every gesture was calculated, every smile measured. She worked the crowd like a conductor leading an orchestra, each interaction precisely timed for maximum effect. The way she leaned in conspiratorially to whisper to the senator's wife, the graceful turn of her wrist as she accepted a glass of champagne, the subtle way she positioned herself to catch the best lighting. It was all part of a performance. "Isaac!" Her voice carried across the room as she spotted him. "Darling, where have you been? Everyone's been asking for you." He didn't move as she glided towards him, her expression perfect except for the slight tightening around her eyes. She could sense something was wrong. She was too skilled at reading people not to notice. "What is it?" she asked quietly when she reached him, maintaining her camera-ready smile. "You look pale. Are you feeling all right?" Isaac studied her face, the face he'd thought he'd be waking up to for the rest of his life. "We need to talk," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. "Privately. Now." A flash of irritation crossed her features before being quickly masked. "Can't it wait? The ceremony is about to start, and the photographer wants some last-minute shots with the wedding party." "No." The word came out firm, final. "It can't wait." She stared at him for a long moment, calculation visible behind her eyes. Then she turned to the nearest guests with a practiced laugh. "Would you excuse us? Pre-wedding jitters, you know how it is." Isaac led her away from the crowd, past the rows of white chairs decorated with silk ribbons, toward the ceremonial aisle. The floral arch loomed ahead of them, thousands of white roses and orchids woven together to create a backdrop for what should have been their perfect moment. "All right," Veronica said once they were out of earshot, her tone sharpening. "What's so important that it couldn't wait 15 minutes? Isaac turned to face her, feeling strangely calm despite the chaos about to unfold. "The wedding's off." She blinked, then laughed, a practiced public sound. "Don't be ridiculous. You're just nervous. This is completely normal before... I know about the meetings with rival tech." He cut in. "I know about the revised marriage contracts. I know everything, Veronica." The change in her expression was subtle but immediate. Something cold and calculating flashed behind her eyes before being replaced with wounded innocence. "Darling, I don't know what you're talking about. Have you been drinking? Or has someone been telling you ridiculous stories?" "Don't." Isaac's voice was quiet but firm. "I've seen the evidence. The security footage. The emails. Your father's lawyers did a good job hiding their tracks, but not good enough." She stepped closer, reaching for his hand. "Isaac, whatever you think you've seen, I can explain. We can talk about this after the ceremony. Everyone is waiting. There won't be a ceremony." He pulled his hand away. "It's over." The mask slipped then, just for a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. Her fingers tightened around her bouquet. "Think very carefully about what you're doing," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Do you have any idea how many important people are here? What this will do to your reputation? To your company's stock price? Better than what you had planned for both." Her eyes narrowed. "You need me, Isaac. My connections, my family's influence. You'll never survive in this industry without them. And if you do this, if you humiliate me in front of everyone..." She let the threat hang in the air. "Goodbye, Veronica." She stared at him for a long moment, searching for any sign of weakness or uncertainty. Finding none, her face transformed into a mask of fury. Without another word, she turned and stormed back towards the crowd, her white dress swishing angrily against the marble floor. The whispers started immediately. Heads turned, phones appeared in hands, and the steady hum of conversation began to rise. Isaac knew he had to act quickly before the speculation got out of control. He walked to the front of the room, where the string quartet was preparing to play the wedding march. With a quiet word to the musicians, he borrowed their microphone stand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room, "I need to make an announcement. I deeply regret to inform you that there will not be a wedding today." The murmurs grew louder. He saw phones recording, saw the shock on faces, saw Veronica's father rising from his seat with thunderous expression. "I sincerely apologize for any inconvenience this has caused. Please enjoy the refreshments, and thank you for your understanding during this difficult moment." As the whispers erupted into full conversations, Isaac caught movement from the corner of his eye. Allison had stepped forward from where she'd been standing near a pillar, her navy dress making her seem like an island of calm in the sea of chaos. Her face was filled with gentle understanding, even as she watched his carefully constructed world crumble around him. Their eyes met across the room, and in that moment, Isaac felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. Not the artificial kind that came with corporate success or social status, but real, genuine hope for something authentic and true. The sound of breaking glass cut through the air. Veronica had thrown her champagne flute against a wall. As security discreetly moved to contain the situation, Isaac remained rooted in place, watching as his almost wedding dissolved into carefully controlled chaos. The late evening air carried the scent of jasmine from the courtyard gardens as Isaac and Allison stepped outside the Hale Innovation Center. The valet circle, with its elegant fountain centerpiece, provided a quiet refuge from the dispersing reception inside. Behind them, the glass doors still vibrated with muffled conversations and the sounds of an event ending far differently than planned. Isaac loosened his bow tie, letting it hang undone around his neck. "I need to hear everything again," he said quietly. "From the beginning." Allison nodded, wrapping her arms around herself against the cool breeze. Her navy dress caught the light from the garden lamps, making the fabric shimmer softly. "It's bigger than just Veronica," she began, her voice heavy with concern. "She's working with someone inside your company, someone high up enough to access everything." Isaac's shoulders tensed. "Who?" "I don't know their name, but it has to be someone in senior leadership. The information they're sharing is too detailed, too internal to come from anywhere else." A sleek black car pulled up to collect departing guests, its headlights sweeping across them momentarily. Isaac waited until it pulled away before speaking again. "Tell me how you found out. All of it." Allison took a deep breath, one hand unconsciously moving to rest on her stomach. 3 weeks ago, I was working late at the community center. One of my former clients came in, extremely upset. She works as part of the cleaning crew at the Metropolitan Club, where Veronica holds her charity meetings. Isaac said, the pieces starting to click together. "Yes, she overheard a conversation she wasn't supposed to hear about plans centered around your wedding date. At first, she thought it was just regular wedding talk, but something felt off to her. She heard mentions of patents, stock transfers, corporate restructuring. She came to me because she was scared. These people sounded powerful, and she didn't know what to do." A couple emerged from the building, their voices carrying across the courtyard. Isaac and Allison moved further into the shadow of a large, ornamental pine tree, waiting until the guests had been picked up before continuing. "I tried to reach you," Allison said, her voice catching slightly. "So many times, every email bounced back. When I tried to come to your office, security wouldn't let me past the lobby. I called, but your numbers had all changed." "Veronica," Isaac said, realization dawning. "She had my personal assistant change all my contact information 3 months ago, said it was for privacy concerns before the wedding. I started digging." Allison continued. "My client remembered names, dates. I have friends in corporate law who helped me understand what I was finding. The more we uncovered, the worse it got. But every time I tried to warn you..." She shook her head. "Veronica found out I was asking questions. She made it clear that if I kept pushing, there would be consequences." Isaac's jaw clenched. "She threatened you?" "Not directly. But 2 days after I tried to meet with you, someone broke into my apartment. Nothing was taken, but all my files were scattered across the floor. The next day, I lost 3 major grants for the community center, grants we desperately needed. The message was clear." More cars pulled away from the circular drive, their tail lights disappearing into the growing darkness. Isaac ran a hand through his hair, his carefully styled wedding appearance now disheveled. "I should have known, should have seen it." She's very good at what she does, Allison said gently. And she had help. Professional help from inside your own company. Someone who knows all your blind spots, all your vulnerabilities. A sudden gust of wind made Allison shiver, and Isaac immediately shrugged out of his tuxedo jacket, draping it over her shoulders despite her quiet protest. You need protection, he said firmly. Both of you do. His eyes dropped briefly to her stomach before meeting her gaze again. Please let me help, at least until we figure out who else is involved. Allison hesitated, pulling his jacket closer around her. I don't want to put you in an even more difficult position. You've already saved me from disaster today. Let me return the favor. She studied his face for a long moment before nodding slowly. Okay. Isaac pulled out his phone, scrolling through his contacts until he found the number he needed. It rang twice before a warm, familiar voice answered. Isaac. Sweetheart, I just heard what happened. Are you all right? I'm okay, Aunt Martha, but I need your help. He glanced at Allison. Do you remember Allison? Of course I remember Allison. Martha replied, her tone softening further. How could I forget? She needs a safe place to stay tonight. Your guest house. Say no more. Martha cut in firmly. The guest house is ready. I'll put fresh sheets on the bed right now. Bring her over whenever you're ready. Thank you, Isaac said, relief evident in his voice. We'll be there soon. As he ended the call, the last few cars were pulling away from the valet circle. The fountain burbled quietly in the background, its peaceful sound at odds with the tension of the evening. Martha's guest house is private, secure, Isaac explained. She's got the best security system money can buy, and the property is gated. You'll be safe there. Allison nodded, gratitude showing in her tired eyes. Thank you, she said softly. The wind rustled through the pine needles above them as they stood in the growing quiet, both aware that this night had changed everything. The failed wedding was just the beginning. Somewhere in the darkness, both Veronica and her mysterious ally were surely planning their next move. The streetlights cast intermittent shadows across the dashboard as Isaac drove through the quiet suburban streets. Beside him, Allison sat wrapped in his tuxedo jacket, her hands folded protectively over her stomach. Neither had spoken much since leaving the Hale Innovation Center, both lost in their own thoughts about the evening's revelations. As they turned onto Maple Avenue, Martha's Victorian-style home came into view. Warm light spilled from the windows, and carefully tended flower beds lined the curved pathway to the wraparound porch. The house stood as a testament to Martha's nurturing nature, every detail crafted to make visitors feel welcome and at ease. Isaac pulled into the circular driveway, parking behind Martha's modest sedan. Here we are, he said softly, turning off the engine. Aunt Martha's haven. Before they could reach the front steps, the door swung open. Martha stood in the entrance, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a floral housecoat and a concerned expression. Come in, she urged, ushering them inside. You both look exhausted. Interior of Martha's home felt like stepping into a warm embrace. Handmade quilts draped over comfortable furniture, and family photos lined the walls, generations of Hales smiling from wooden frames. The air carried the lingering scent of fresh-baked cookies and lavender. Sit down, dear, Martha said to Allison, guiding her to an overstuffed armchair. I'll make us some chamomile tea. It's good for settling nerves and perfectly safe for the baby. Allison's eyes widened slightly. How did you... Martha's smile was gentle. I may be getting older, but my eyes still work just fine. And I remember that protective way of holding yourself. I did the same thing when I was expecting Isaac's father. As Martha disappeared into the kitchen, Isaac settled onto the couch across from Allison. His eyes were drawn to a photo on the side table, himself and Allison on their wedding day, both laughing as they fed each other cake. Martha had never taken it down, even after the divorce. "Here we are," Martha announced, returning with a tray holding 3 steaming mugs and a plate of shortbread cookies. "Now, why don't you tell me what's really going on?" Over the next hour, they explained everything: the conspiracy, the threats, the evidence on the flash drive. Martha listened intently, her expression growing more concerned with each detail. "The guest house is ready whenever you need it, Allison," she said firmly. "It's got its own alarm system, and I had motion sensor lights installed last month. No one will get near you without us knowing." "Thank you," Allison replied softly. "I can't tell you how much this means to me." A comfortable silence fell as they sipped their tea. Martha's grandfather clock ticked steadily in the corner, marking the passing minutes. Finally, Isaac spoke up. "What happened to us?" he asked quietly, looking at Allison. "After we lost the baby, I threw myself into work, thinking if I could just be successful enough, and I dove into helping others." Allison finished. "The community center became my refuge. All those kids who needed someone to believe in them, it helped me cope with our loss." Martha reached over and squeezed Allison's hand. "Sometimes the hardest storms bring us back to where we need to be." As the night grew later, exhaustion began to show on Allison's face. Isaac stood up, knowing he should leave, but Allison's voice stopped him. "I know it's silly," she said, twisting her hands in her lap. "But after everything that's happened, the break-in at my apartment, the threats, I'm nervous about sleeping alone." "Not silly at all," Martha assured her, patting her shoulder. "I'll stay up and read in the room next door for a while. I'm a light sleeper, anyway. Comes from years of listening for crying babies." Isaac lingered on the porch after saying goodnight, watching the warm light from the living room window spill across the garden. Through the curtains, he could see Martha settling Allison, with extra pillows and blankets, her maternal instincts in full force. The weight of the flash drive felt heavy in his pocket. Tomorrow he would begin the process of uncovering who else was involved in Veronica's scheme. But for now, knowing Allison was safe under Martha's protection gave him a measure of peace. With one last glance at the window, Isaac walked to his car. The gravel crunched under his feet as he made his way down the driveway, his mind already formulating plans to protect both his company and the woman he'd never truly stopped loving. Martha's porch light stayed on, a beacon in the darkness, as he drove away into the night. The familiar streets of his childhood neighborhood fell away behind him as determination settled in his chest. Someone had tried to destroy everything he'd built, had threatened the mother of his child. He wouldn't rest until he discovered the truth. The morning sun streamed through the glass walls of Hale Innovation Center as Isaac walked through the lobby. Conversations hushed as he passed, employees stealing glances and whispering behind their hands. News of the cancelled wedding had spread like wildfire, and speculation ran rampant. "Good morning, Mr. Hale." His assistant Jennifer greeted him, hurrying to keep pace. "I've already contacted the event planners about refunds, and PR has drafted a statement." "Thank you, Jennifer," Isaac interrupted gently. "But first, I need you to gather the cybersecurity team in Conference Room A immediately." Within 15 minutes, Isaac sat at the head of a sleek conference table, facing his top security experts. The room felt too large for just 5 people, their faces reflecting varying degrees of concern. "I need a complete audit," Isaac began, his voice steady despite his churning stomach. "Server access logs, executive data transfers, everything from the past 6 months. Something's been compromised, and I need to know how deep it goes." Marcus Chen, his head of cybersecurity, leaned forward. "Sir, that's thousands of hours of data. What exactly are we looking for? Patterns, irregularities, anything that doesn't fit. Isaac's fingers drummed against the table. And I need it handled with absolute discretion. While his team got to work, across town, Allison woke to the comforting aroma of cinnamon and coffee wafting through Martha's house. She found her way to the sunny kitchen, where Martha stood at the stove, flipping French toast. "There you are, sweetheart." Martha smiled warmly. "I hope you're hungry. The baby needs a good breakfast." Allison settled at the kitchen table, wrapped in one of Martha's soft cardigans. "It smells wonderful. Thank you for everything, Martha." Martha placed a loaded plate in front of her, then sat down with her own coffee. "You know," she began, her eyes distant with memory, "Isaac wasn't always focused on success and money. When he was little, he was the most compassionate child." Allison spread butter on her French toast, listening intently as Martha continued. "He would bring home injured birds, stray cats, anything that needed help. Once, he saved up his allowance for 3 months to buy a wheelchair for our elderly neighbor's dog." Martha's voice softened. That moral compass of his, it got buried somewhere along the way, but it never truly disappeared. "What changed him?" Allison asked quietly. Martha sighed. "His father's death hit him hard. He was only 16. I think he decided that success meant never being vulnerable again." She reached across the table to squeeze Allison's hand. "But you brought out that caring boy in him. I saw it then, and I see it now in the way he looks at you." Their conversation was interrupted by a text from Isaac, asking if Allison was ready for her afternoon ultrasound appointment. Martha insisted on making her eat seconds before letting her get ready. At 2 o'clock sharp, Isaac's car pulled into the driveway. He helped Allison into the passenger seat, his hand lingering protectively at her elbow. The drive to the clinic was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Allison noticed Isaac's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, betraying his nervousness. The medical center's waiting room was painted in soothing blues and greens. They sat together, surrounded by other expectant parents, while Allison filled out paperwork. Isaac's leg bounced anxiously until she placed a gentle hand on his knee. "Allison Montgomery?" A nurse called, leading them to an exam room. The technician dimmed the lights and asked Allison to lie back on the padded table. Isaac stood awkwardly until she patted the chair beside her. "This might be a little cold," the technician warned as she applied the gel to Allison's stomach. For a moment, there was only the soft whir of the ultrasound machine. Then, suddenly, a rapid swooshing filled the room, their baby's heartbeat, strong and steady at 140 beats per minute. Isaac's breath caught. His hand found Allison's without conscious thought. "There's your baby." The technician smiled, pointing to the screen. "Everything looks perfect. Would you like to know the gender?" They looked at each other, and Allison shook her head. "Not yet," she said softly. After the appointment, they stood in the parking lot, both still processing the emotional weight of what they'd shared. Isaac cleared his throat. "Would it be okay if... could I come to more appointments?" Allison's smile was warm. "Of course. You're this baby's father, Isaac." Just then, his phone buzzed with an alert. Isaac's expression shifted as he read the notification, a preliminary report from his security team. His jaw tightened as he scanned the data, which highlighted suspicious access patterns from one particular executive account. "Is everything okay?" Allison asked, noting his changed demeanor. "They may have found something," he said quietly, his eyes still on the screen. "A digital trail that could lead us to whoever's behind this." The report glowed ominously on his phone, names and timestamps painting a picture of betrayal that would need to be carefully unraveled. But for now, the sound of their baby's heartbeat still echoed in his mind, grounding him in what truly mattered. Back at Martha's house, Isaac spread papers across the kitchen table while Allison sat beside him, her reading glasses perched on her nose. Afternoon sunlight streamed through lace curtains as they pored over financial records and server logs. "Look at these timestamps." Isaac pointed to a series of late-night database accesses. "Someone's been copying research and development files at 3 a.m, using Mark's security credentials." Allison leaned closer, her brow furrowed. "That matches what I remember about Mark's habits. He always worked unusual hours, said he did his best thinking when the office was empty." Martha busied herself in the background, preparing a pot roast while keeping a watchful eye on the pair. The familiar scent of herbs and slow-cooked meat filled the kitchen. "Tell me more about what you noticed about Mark," Isaac said, pushing aside a stack of papers. "You always had good instincts about people." Allison took off her glasses, rubbing her temples. "Well, the last few times I saw him at company events, before our separation, he seemed different, more distracted. He kept checking his phone, stepping away for private calls. And Sarah—" "His wife?" Isaac prompted. "Yes. She mentioned they were meeting with specialists at Mayo Clinic. The experimental treatments weren't covered by insurance." Allison's voice softened with compassion. The costs were astronomical. Isaac ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration Allison remembered well. "But why wouldn't he just come to me? I would have helped them." "Sometimes pride makes people do desperate things," Martha interjected gently, wiping her hands on her apron. "Especially men who've always been the provider, the protector." Isaac stood up and paced the kitchen, pieces falling into place. "The timing fits. 6 months ago, Mark started pushing hard for that merger with Vertex Technologies, said it would strengthen our market position." He shook his head. "But Vertex is exactly who would benefit most from our intellectual property." "The same company Veronica was meeting with," Allison added quietly. The afternoon light shifted to golden evening as they continued working. Martha's presence provided a sense of stability, a quiet humming and the sounds of cooking a comforting backdrop to their investigation. "Here," Allison said suddenly, pointing to a spreadsheet. "These offshore transfers, they're all in increments of $50,000, small enough to avoid immediate suspicion, but they add up to millions." Isaac leaned over her shoulder, their faces close. "Good catch. And the receiving account—" He typed rapidly on his laptop. "It's registered to a shell company in the Cayman Islands." The oven timer chimed, and Martha began setting the table, shooing away their protests when they offered to help. Soon, the kitchen table was cleared of papers and replaced with steaming plates of pot roast, roasted vegetables, and fresh rolls. "Sit, both of you," Martha insisted. "You need proper food and a moment's peace." The familiar routine of passing dishes and sharing a meal brought back memories. Isaac found himself watching Allison as she talked with Martha about the baby, noting how her hands still moved in the same animated way when she spoke. "Remember those Sunday dinners we used to have?" Martha asked, passing the butter. "Every week, like clockwork." "Until work got too busy," Isaac admitted, regret coloring his voice. "Life has a way of showing us what really matters," Martha said wisely. "Sometimes we just need to pay attention to the signs." After dinner, Isaac helped Martha clear the dishes while Allison rested on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. When Isaac joined her, the evening air was cool and sweet with the scent of Martha's rose garden. "I'll walk you to your room," he offered as darkness settled in. They climbed the stairs in comfortable silence, pausing at the guest room door. Allison turned to face him, her expression uncertain in the dim hallway light. "Isaac," she began softly, "what happened to us? We used to tell each other everything." He leaned against the door frame, his shoulders heavy with remembered pain. "After we lost the baby, I didn't know how to handle your grief and mine. Work became my escape. It was easier than facing the emptiness." "I needed you," Allison whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. "But every time I reached for you, you were gone." "I know." Isaac's voice was rough with emotion. "I thought if I worked harder, made more money, somehow it would fix things. But I was just running away." Allison wiped her eyes. "We were both so scared of being hurt again." "I'm still scared," Isaac admitted. "But I'm more scared of making the same mistakes." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history between them. "Good night, Isaac," Allison said finally, her hand resting briefly on his arm before she disappeared into her room. The drive home felt longer than usual, city lights blurring past as Isaac's mind churned. In his home office, he opened his laptop one last time, scanning through the cyber audit results with growing certainty. The evidence was there in cold, hard data: login times, file transfers, encrypted communications. Mark Tolland, his mentor and friend for 15 years, had betrayed him. Isaac stared at the screen until his eyes burned, remembering countless late-night strategy sessions, family barbecues, the proud smile on Mark's face at Isaac's first major success. Now those memories were tainted with questions and doubt. He closed the laptop, but sleep felt impossible. Tomorrow he would have to confront the man who had been like a second father to him. Tonight he could only sit in the darkness, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. The morning sun cast long shadows across Isaac's office as he watched Mark Tolland approach through the glass walls. His mentor's familiar stride carried the same confidence it always had, but today Isaac saw it differently, as the walk of someone who thought they were untouchable. "You wanted to see me?" Mark asked, settling into the chair across from Isaac's desk. His silver hair caught the light, reminding Isaac of all the times he'd sought this man's wisdom. "Yes." Isaac pulled up several spreadsheets on his computer screen. "I've been reviewing some unusual data patterns in our secure servers, specifically file transfers that don't align with any current projects." Mark's expression remained neutral, but his fingers tightened slightly on the armrest. "After what happened with Veronica, it's natural to be suspicious, but you need to be careful about seeing threats where none exist." "These aren't imagined threats, Mark." Isaac turned his monitor so Mark could see the logs. "There are dozens of unauthorized access attempts from your credentials, all during off hours." "I often work late," Mark said dismissively. "You know that. And the encrypted financial transactions to offshore accounts?" A flash of something, anger, fear, crossed Mark's face before he covered it with a practiced smile. "Isaac, son, you're not thinking clearly. The wedding disaster has you jumping at shadows. Take some time off, clear your head." "Don't patronize me," Isaac said quietly. "I trusted you like family." Mark stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You're stressed and paranoid. When you're ready to have a rational conversation, let me know." He strode toward the door, then paused. "Remember who helped build this company with you, Isaac. Don't make accusations you can't take back." The threat in his words hung in the air as he left. Isaac sat back in his chair, his suspicions hardening into certainty. The mentor he'd admired for so many years was now his enemy. Across town, Allison sat in Pastor Brooks's warm office at the community center, sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows. The familiar space had always brought her comfort, especially during the darkest days after her miscarriage and divorce. "The baby's growing right on schedule," she told him, one hand resting on her growing belly. "But everything else? It's so complicated, Pastor Brooks. Isaac is in danger, and I'm worried about him." The pastor leaned forward in his chair, his kind eyes full of understanding. Sometimes God uses difficult seasons to bring important truths to light. It's painful but necessary, like pulling weeds to protect a garden. "I just never imagined being back in Isaac's life like this," Allison admitted, "especially not while carrying his child." "God's timing rarely matches our expectations," Pastor Brooks said gently. "But his purposes are always greater than our plans. How are you feeling about Isaac himself?" Allison twisted her hands in her lap. "He's different, more present, more himself in a way I haven't seen in years. But I'm scared to trust that change." "That's understandable." Pastor Brooks smiled warmly. "Keep praying for wisdom, Allison, and remember that you're not alone in this journey." The afternoon passed quietly at Martha's house, where Allison helped prepare dinner while Martha shared stories about Isaac's childhood. Tales of a sensitive boy who would spend hours fixing broken toys for neighborhood kids. "He lost that tenderness somewhere along the way," Martha said, chopping vegetables. "But I see it coming back now, especially when he looks at you." Isaac arrived just as the sun was setting, looking tired but managing a genuine smile when Martha hugged him. Over Martha's homemade chicken and dumplings, they kept the conversation light, avoiding discussion of the morning's confrontation with Mark. After dinner, Isaac and Allison found themselves alone on the back porch, the evening air sweet with jasmine from Martha's garden. Crickets chirped in the growing darkness, and fireflies danced among the rose bushes. "I need to tell you something," Isaac said quietly, his hands gripping the porch railing. "And I know the timing isn't ideal with everything that's happening." Allison turned to face him, her heart beating faster at the intensity in his voice. "I still love you, Allison." The words came out raw and honest. "I never stopped, even when I was too blind and stubborn to show it, even when I thought marrying Veronica would somehow help me move on." Allison's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected this confession, hadn't prepared herself for the way it would make her feel. "You don't have to say anything," Isaac continued quickly. "I just needed you to know. Everything that's happened, the wedding, the conspiracy, the baby. It's like God's been trying to wake me up, to show me what really matters." Tears pricked at Allison's eyes as she looked up at the star-filled sky. She didn't pull away when Isaac's hand found hers on the railing. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. The moment felt fragile and precious, like a delicate bridge between their past and an uncertain future. Neither spoke again, letting the cricket songs and gentle night breeze say what words couldn't. When they finally said goodnight, Allison's hand lingered in Isaac's for just a moment longer than necessary. It wasn't an answer to his confession, but it wasn't a rejection either. It was a quiet acknowledgement of possibility, of hope that sometimes love, like truth, finds its way back to the surface even in the darkest times. The morning sun cast golden light through Isaac's kitchen windows as he prepared a simple breakfast of toast and coffee. His mind was clearer than it had been in days, despite the weight of everything happening. Last night's conversation with Allison on Martha's porch had stirred something in his heart, a quiet hope he hadn't dared feel in months. He scrolled through emails on his phone while spreading butter on his toast, pausing to read updates from his cybersecurity team. They had been working through the night, piecing together digital breadcrumbs that would prove Mark's involvement beyond any doubt. Across town, Allison sat in Martha's sunny breakfast nook, organizing a growing stack of prenatal paperwork. Doctor's appointments, ultrasound schedules, and nutrition guidelines spread across the wooden table as she sorted them into a fresh binder. Martha had given her a comfortable space to rest, insisting that stress wasn't good for the baby. "You need to take care of yourself first," Martha reminded her, setting down a cup of chamomile tea. Everything else will fall into place. Allison smiled gratefully, one hand absently rubbing her growing belly. I know. It's just hard not to worry about Isaac and everything that's happening at his company. That boy's stronger than he looks, Martha assured her, and smarter too. He'll figure this out. At his office, Isaac sat surrounded by multiple computer screens, each displaying different pieces of the investigation. The forensic team had recovered deleted files, tracked suspicious network activity, and mapped out a timeline of betrayal that made his stomach turn. Look at this. His head of security pointed to a series of timestamps. These patent documents were accessed at 2 a.m, then transmitted to an external server. The login credentials belonged to Mark's account. Isaac leaned closer, his jaw tightening. Show me the bank records again. The evidence was damning. Regular transfers had been moving through a complex network of offshore accounts, all leading back to shell companies connected to Mark. Security footage showed late-night meetings between Mark and Veronica in parking garages and coffee shops. Everything pointed to a carefully orchestrated plan to steal Isaac's intellectual property and destroy his company from within. With trembling fingers, Isaac picked up his phone to call Mark. The line rang once before going straight to voicemail. He tried again. Nothing. Text messages went undelivered. Mark had disappeared. Sir, his security chief spoke up. We've lost track of Mr. Tolland's vehicle. His phone appears to be turned off. Isaac's heart rate quickened. Something wasn't right. He needed to warn Allison. Meanwhile, at Martha's house, Allison had grown restless after hours of paperwork and rest. The afternoon air called to her, promising a brief escape from the worry that had settled over the household. Martha was upstairs doing laundry when Allison stepped out onto the front path, breathing in the fresh spring air. She had only taken a few steps when a car pulled up quickly to the curb. Mark Tolland emerged, looking nothing like the polished executive she remembered. His silver hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, and his usually confident demeanor replaced by visible panic. Allison, he called out, his voice shaking. Please, I need to talk to you. She instinctively took a step back, one hand protectively covering her belly. Mark, what are you doing here? Isaac's going to destroy everything, he said, moving closer. His eyes darted around frantically. My whole life's work, my family's future, gone. I need to explain before it's too late. You should talk to Isaac directly, Allison suggested carefully, noting how his hands trembled. I'm sure if you're honest with him— No, Mark interrupted. He won't listen now, but he trusts you. You can help me make him understand. Please come with me, just for a little while. Allison glanced back at Martha's house, weighing her options. Mark had always been kind to her during her marriage to Isaac. She'd seen him play with his grandchildren, donate generously to charity, support his wife through cancer treatments. Whatever he'd done, she sensed genuine desperation in his plea. I don't think that's a good idea, she said gently. Why don't we call Isaac together? Mark moved closer, his voice dropping. Please, Allison, if you don't come with me now, everything will fall apart. People will get hurt. I just need a chance to explain. She saw tears in his eyes, real ones, and felt her resolve wavering. If she went with him, maybe she could understand why he'd betrayed Isaac. Maybe she could even help fix things before they got worse. My wife's medical bills, Mark continued, his voice cracking. The experimental treatments— I had no choice. Please, just come with me. Let me explain everything. Allison looked at him closely, reading the mix of fear and desperation in his expression. Her social worker's instincts told her he was a man pushed to his breaking point, making him unpredictable and dangerous. But those same instincts also told her that refusing him now might make things worse. A cool breeze rustled the trees as she made her decision. Placing one hand protectively over her unborn child, she took a careful step toward Mark's car. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll listen, but just for a little while." Mark's shoulders sagged with relief as he opened the passenger door. "Thank you. I promise. This is the only way to stop things from getting worse." As Allison settled into the seat, she said a silent prayer for protection, for herself, for her baby, and for whatever painful truth she was about to discover. The warehouse district sat empty and grey in the late afternoon sun. Mark's luxury sedan looked out of place among the abandoned loading docks and weathered metal buildings. He pulled up to a concrete structure with faded numbers painted on its side. 212. "We can talk privately here," Mark said, his voice strained as he killed the engine. "No one will overhear us." Allison stepped out cautiously, her hand still protective over her belly. The space felt vast and hollow, their footsteps echoing as Mark led her through a rusted side door. Dust motes danced in the weak sunlight filtering through grimy high windows. Empty pallets and forgotten machinery cast long shadows across the concrete floor. "I need you to understand," Mark began, pacing nervously. "Everything I did, it wasn't supposed to go this far." "Then explain it to me," Allison said gently, using the calm voice she'd developed over years of crisis counseling. "Help me understand why you'd betray Isaac's trust." Mark ran trembling fingers through his silver hair. "Angela's cancer came back. The experimental treatments, they're not covered by insurance, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're our only hope." His voice cracked. "I tried everything else first. Mortgaged our house, sold our investments. It wasn't enough." "So you turned to Veronica?" Allison asked softly. "She approached me," Mark admitted. "Said she could make our problems disappear if I helped her access certain patents, certain accounts." He laughed bitterly. "It seemed so simple at first. Just a few documents, a few passwords. Then she wanted more, always more." Allison felt a twinge of discomfort in her lower abdomen, but ignored it. "Isaac would have helped if you'd told him about Angela. You know how generous he is." "I couldn't ask him for that much," Mark exploded. "After 30 years of being his mentor, his second father, to go begging for charity?" He shook his head violently. "And now he'll destroy me. Everything I've built, my reputation, my family's future. It's not too late." Allison insisted. "Turn yourself in. Work with Isaac to make it right. He'll listen." "Listen," Mark interrupted. "He'll send me to prison. Angela will die alone while I rot in a cell. Our grandchildren will grow up knowing their grandfather is a criminal." Another sharp pain hit Allison, stronger this time. She pressed her hand against the wall to steady herself. "Please, Mark. Running only makes it worse." "You don't understand." He was nearly shouting now, his composed executive demeanor completely shattered. "Veronica has evidence that could ruin more than just me. People I involved, promises I made. I can't just—" Allison gasped as a wave of dizziness washed over her. The pain in her abdomen had become a burning knife. Something warm trickled down her leg. "Mark," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. "Something's wrong. The baby—" He turned, finally seeing how pale she'd become, how she was doubled over, one hand braced against the wall. A small red stain was spreading across her dress. "Oh, God!" Mark breathed. All the anger drained from his face, replaced by horror. "No, no, no!" Allison's knees buckled. Mark caught her before she hit the ground, lowering her gently. His hands shook as he pulled out his phone and dialed 911. "I need an ambulance!" he shouted into the phone. "Warehouse 212 on Industrial Drive. Pregnant woman, she's bleeding. Please hurry!" Allison could barely focus through the pain and dizziness. She heard Mark giving more details to the dispatcher, his voice cracking with panic. The concrete felt cold against her back. She thought of Isaac, of their baby, of all the things left unsaid. Meanwhile, Isaac pulled up to Martha's house, worry gnawing at him after several unanswered calls to Allison. He found Martha in tears on the front porch. "She's gone." Martha choked out. "I was upstairs. I didn't see. A neighbor said Mark Tolland was here. She got into his car." Isaac's blood ran cold. He yanked out his phone, pulling up the tracking app he'd insisted Allison install for safety. The location pointer blinked steadily, showing a spot in the warehouse district. "Call the police," he told Martha as he ran to his car. "Tell them everything." The drive was a blur of running lights and horns as Isaac wove through traffic. His hands clenched the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. Prayers tumbled from his lips. Desperate, pleading prayers for Allison and their child's safety. He screeched into the warehouse lot just as an ambulance arrived, lights flashing. His heart stopped when he saw paramedics rushing through a side door with a stretcher. Moments later, they emerged with Allison strapped to it. Her face was ghostly pale, her eyes fluttering. "Sir, please stay back," an EMT ordered as Isaac ran forward. "That's my wife," Isaac shouted. "That's my baby!" He caught a glimpse of Mark standing to the side, looking shell-shocked. But Isaac's entire focus was on Allison's still form as the paramedics loaded her into the ambulance. An IV line snaked from her arm. Monitoring equipment beeped ominously. "BP's dropping," one EMT called out. "We need to move." "I'm coming with her," Isaac insisted, climbing in beside the stretcher. He grabbed Allison's cold hand as the ambulance doors slammed shut. The last thing he saw through the window was Mark sinking to his knees in the parking lot as police cars began arriving, their lights painting the gathering dusk in flashes of red and blue. Isaac's BMW hugged the ambulance's tail through the darkening city streets, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had gone bone white. Every time the ambulance's sirens wailed through an intersection, his heart clenched with fresh fear. "Please, God," he whispered, the words feeling strange and rusty in his mouth after so many years. "Please don't take them from me. Not like this." Red lights painted the dashboard as they stopped at yet another intersection. Isaac's mind raced with memories, Allison's smile the day they married, her tears during their last miscarriage, the moment she'd appeared at his almost wedding to Veronica. So much wasted time. So many mistakes. The emergency room entrance loomed ahead, harsh fluorescent lights flooding the ambulance bay. Isaac barely remembered parking, barely registered running through the automatic doors. Inside, organized chaos swirled around him as medical staff rushed Allison down a corridor on a gurney. "Sir, you need to wait here," a nurse said firmly, catching his arm as he tried to follow. "The doctors need space to work. Someone will update you soon." Isaac stood frozen, watching through swinging doors as they wheeled Allison away. Her face was so pale, oxygen mask clouding with each shallow breath. Monitors beeped warnings he didn't understand, but that made the medical team move faster. "Surgery," he heard someone say. "Contact obstetrics stat." He sank into an uncomfortable waiting room chair, head falling into his hands. Time became meaningless, stretched like taffy, then compressed into suffocating moments. The antiseptic smell burned his nose. Every time footsteps approached, his head snapped up, hoping for news. Martha arrived 20 minutes later, her silver hair disheveled and eyes red from crying. She rushed to Isaac, wrapping him in a fierce hug that broke through his shocked numbness. "I called Pastor Brooks," she said softly, settling into the chair beside him. "He's on his way. The police have Mark in custody, but that doesn't matter right now. All that matters is Allison and the baby." Isaac nodded mechanically, unable to form words. Martha's steady presence anchored him as minutes crawled by. She prayed quietly beside him, one hand rubbing slow circles on his back like she had when he was a child. Pastor Brooks arrived just as Isaac was about to explode from the waiting. The older man's calm demeanor and gentle eyes provided an immediate sense of stability in the sterile chaos of the emergency ward. "Isaac," Pastor Brooks said warmly, taking the seat on his other side. "Martha filled me in. We're here with you, son. You're not alone in this." Something in the pastor's fatherly tone cracked Isaac's careful control. Words began pouring out of him, weighted with grief and guilt. "I pushed her away," he choked out. "After we lost the first baby, I buried myself in work instead of grieving with her. Made her feel so alone. Then I almost married Veronica. God, what was I thinking? Some corporate power match, while the only woman I've ever truly loved was carrying my child and trying to save me from disaster." Pastor Brooks listened without judgment, his weathered hand steady on Isaac's shoulder. "The past is past, Isaac. What matters is what you do with this moment forward." "I don't deserve another chance," Isaac whispered. "But please, God, please give me one. Let me make it right." "Would you like to pray together?" Pastor Brooks asked gently. Isaac nodded, surprising himself. The last time he'd properly prayed was at his mother's funeral 15 years ago. Pastor Brooks took his hand, and Martha held his other one, forming a small circle of hope in the sterile waiting room. "Dear Heavenly Father," Pastor Brooks began, his voice low and steady. "We come before you now, lifting up Allison and this precious unborn child into your loving care. Guide the doctor's hands, grant them wisdom and skill beyond measure. Fill Allison with your strength and healing power." Isaac's throat tightened as he listened to the prayer. Tears he'd been holding back began rolling down his cheeks. "Lord," he broke in, voice raw with emotion, "I know I've turned away from you, chosen pride and success over love and faith, but please, please save them. I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of them. I'll put you and family first. Just please don't take them away." They continued praying together, minutes stretching into hours. Nurses came and went. Other families in the waiting room cycled through, some leaving with joy, others with grief. Isaac barely noticed, lost in an endless loop of memories and prayers. The sun had long since set when the surgeon finally appeared, still wearing his surgical cap and mask pulled down around his neck. Isaac shot to his feet, heart hammering against his ribs. Martha and Pastor Brooks stood with him, their steady presence helping him stay upright as the doctor approached with serious eyes. "Mr. Hale?" the surgeon asked, stopping before their small group. He pulled off his surgical cap, revealing graying hair matted with sweat from hours in the operating room. The weight of news yet unspoken hung heavy in the air between them. The surgeon took a deep breath, his expression softening slightly. "Mr. Hale, your wife experienced what we call placental abruption, a separation of the placenta from the uterine wall. It was brought on by extreme stress and elevated blood pressure. We had to perform an emergency procedure to stabilize both mother and child." Isaac swayed slightly, Martha's hand steadying his elbow. "Are they—" He couldn't finish the question. "Both Allison and the baby are stable," the surgeon assured him. "We've managed to stop the bleeding and restore proper blood flow to the placenta. However, she'll need careful monitoring and complete bed rest for the remainder of her pregnancy. Any additional stress could trigger another episode." Relief flooded through Isaac so powerfully his knees nearly buckled. Pastor Brooks murmured a quiet, "Thank you, Lord," beside him. "When can we see her?" Martha asked, her voice trembling. "She's being moved to recovery now. She's still groggy from the anesthesia, but you can visit briefly, 2 at a time, please." Isaac turned to Pastor Brooks, who smiled warmly. "Go," Martha and I will wait here. We'll come up in a little while." Following a nurse through winding corridors, Isaac's heart pounded with each step. The recovery room was dimly lit and quiet except for the steady beeping of monitors. Allison lay pale against white sheets, dark circles under her eyes, but breathing steadily. An IV dripped fluids into her arm, and a fetal monitor traced their baby's heartbeat in reassuring peaks and valleys. Martha squeezed his hand before moving to the chair in the corner, giving him space to approach the bed. Isaac's fingers trembled as he reached for Allison's hand, careful of the pulse monitor clipped to her finger. "Allison," he whispered. Her eyelids fluttered, then slowly opened. Recognition dawned in her tired eyes. "Isaac, I'm here," he said, voice breaking. "I'm right here. You're both safe now." Tears welled in her eyes. "The baby?" "Stable," he assured her quickly. "Everything's okay, but you need to rest and stay calm. Doctor's orders." She managed a weak smile. "I was so scared," she admitted. "When Mark started acting erratic, I thought—" "Shh," Isaac soothed, brushing hair from her forehead. "Don't think about that now. Just focus on getting better." His own tears spilled over, dropping onto their joined hands. "God, Allison, when I got to that warehouse and saw you, I've never been so terrified in my life." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "No, I'm sorry for everything. For pushing you away after we lost the first baby. For burying myself in work instead of being there for you. For almost making the biggest mistake of my life with Veronica." His voice cracked. "I love you, Allison. I never stopped loving you. I was just too blind and proud to admit it." She squeezed his hand weakly. "I was afraid you'd resent me forever. For the miscarriage, for the divorce, for coming back into your life with this baby and all this chaos." "Never," he said firmly. "You saved me from disaster. You were brave enough to face danger to protect me, even after how I treated you." He pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I don't deserve another chance, but if you'll give me one, I swear I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of you and our child." Martha quietly approached the bed, tears streaming down her face. "You two have always belonged together," she said softly. "Sometimes it takes nearly losing everything to see what matters most." A gentle knock interrupted them. 2 police officers stood in the doorway, apologetic but determined. "Mr. Hale, we need to take your statement about today's events, sir." Isaac looked reluctantly at Allison, but she gave him an encouraging nod. "Go. I'm not going anywhere." He followed the officers to a small consultation room where he detailed everything. Mark's betrayal, the corporate espionage, Veronica's involvement, and the events at the warehouse. He spoke without anger or desire for revenge, understanding now how desperation could drive people to terrible choices. "Mark's wife is very ill," he explained. "He needed money for experimental treatments insurance wouldn't cover. That doesn't excuse what he did, but I understand wanting to save someone you love at any cost." The officers took detailed notes, asking clarifying questions about timelines and evidence. When they finished, Isaac returned to Allison's room. She was dozing, lightly, Martha still keeping faithful watch. He settled into the chair beside the bed, taking Allison's hand once more. "I promise you," he whispered, "you'll never have to face danger alone again. I'll handle everything, the company, the legal issues, all of it. Your only job is to rest and keep our baby safe." Martha smiled approvingly from across the bed. "You sound like your father now, the way he used to be, before success changed him. A man who put family first." Isaac nodded, watching Allison's peaceful face. The steady rhythm of the fetal monitor filled him with profound gratitude. He had come so close to losing everything that mattered, But God had given him another chance, and this time, he wouldn't waste it. "Sleep well, my love," he murmured to Alison. "I'll be right here when you wake up." The morning sunlight streamed through the hospital window, casting a warm glow across Alison's recovery room. Isaac sat at a small table near her bed, reviewing police reports and corporate documents on his laptop while she slept peacefully. He'd barely left her side in the 48 hours since the incident, working remotely to handle the fallout of Mark's actions. His phone buzzed softly. Another message from the investigative team. They'd been treating Mark's case with surprising compassion after learning about his desperate circumstances. Isaac had insisted on it, remembering Martha's words about grace and redemption. "How is he doing?" Alison asked softly, stirring from her rest. Isaac looked up, offering a gentle smile. "Mark's cooperating fully. He's provided all the evidence needed about Veronica's involvement. The investigators say he seems genuinely remorseful." "And his wife?" Alison's concern was genuine, despite everything that had happened. "I've arranged for her to continue receiving treatment through our corporate healthcare foundation," Isaac explained. "Whatever happens with Mark legally, she won't lose access to medical care. It was the right thing to do." Alison reached for his hand, squeezing it weakly. "You're becoming the man I always knew you could be." Before Isaac could respond, a news alert flashed across his laptop screen. Veronica's arrest was making headlines. Tech heiress arrested in corporate espionage scandal. The article detailed her scheme to marry Isaac for access to his patents and intellectual property. "The media's having a field day with this." Isaac sighed, turning the screen so Alison could see. "But honestly, I'm just grateful the truth came out before it was too late." A gentle knock interrupted them as Martha entered, carrying a basket of fresh muffins and fruit. The homey aroma filled the sterile hospital room immediately. "You two need proper nourishment," she declared, setting up a makeshift breakfast on the bedside table. "Hospital food won't do for my great niece or nephew." Pastor Brooks arrived shortly after, his calm presence bringing peace to the room. He carried a small, devotional book and some magazines for Alison. "How are you feeling today, dear?" he asked, pulling up a chair. "Stronger," Alison replied. "The doctor says the baby's vitals have stabilized completely." "God is good," Pastor Brooks smiled, "and sometimes he uses our trials to bring about beautiful restoration." Throughout the day, Isaac attended to both work and Alison's needs. He helped her walk short distances around the room, read aloud from her favorite books during rest periods, and coordinated with her medical team. When lunch arrived, he replaced the hospital meal with homemade soup Martha had brought. That afternoon, Dr. Chen arrived for Alison's checkup. Isaac held his breath as she reviewed the latest test results and examined the fetal monitor readings. "Everything looks excellent," Dr. Chen announced with a warm smile. "The baby's development is right on track, and your own vital signs have improved significantly. The placental distress has completely resolved." Relief washed over Isaac's face. He'd been carrying so much worry about both Alison and their child. "When can she go home?" he asked. "I'd like to keep her one more night for observation, but barring any changes, she can be discharged tomorrow morning." The doctor made some notes in her chart. "Just remember, minimal stress and plenty of rest for the next few weeks." After Dr. Chen left, Isaac sat on the edge of Alison's bed, taking her hand in his. The good news about their baby's health had crystallized something he'd been feeling all day. "Alison," he began softly, "these past few days have shown me what truly matters in life, when I thought I might lose you both." His voice cracked with emotion. Sliding from the bed to one knee, he kept hold of her hand. Alison's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. "I'm not asking this out of guilt or obligation," Isaac continued. his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. I'm asking because I love you. Completely and unconditionally. Because I want to spend the rest of my life being the husband and father you both deserve. He paused, his heart pounding. Alison Montgomery, will you marry me? Again. Tears spilled down Alison's cheeks as she nodded. Yes. She whispered. Yes. Isaac carefully gathered her into his arms, mindful of the IV lines and monitors. They held each other, both crying happy tears as Martha and Pastor Brooks watched from the doorway, their own eyes moist with joy. Later that evening, as the sun set over the city skyline, Isaac and Alison sat together on her hospital bed. Their fingers were intertwined as they talked softly about their future, the nursery they would design together, the quiet house they would make their home, the family traditions they would create. I was thinking, Isaac said, gently rubbing his thumb across her knuckles. Maybe we could convert my home office into the nursery. It has that big bay window where we could put a rocking chair. Alison smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. I'd like that. And maybe we could plant a garden in the backyard. Something our little one can help tend when they're older. Whatever you want, Isaac promised. Both of you are my priority now. Everything else is just details. The soft beeping of the fetal monitor provided a steady backdrop to their conversation, a constant reminder of the precious life they'd almost lost, and the new beginning they'd been granted. As evening settled into night, they continued holding hands, their hearts full of love and hope for their future together. The gentle autumn breeze rustled through Martha's garden as Alison sat in the cushioned porch swing, her hand resting on her growing belly. The past few weeks had brought healing, not just to her body, but to her heart as well. Martha's home had become a sanctuary of peace and renewal. Isaac arrived each morning like clockwork, usually bearing fresh pastries or prenatal vitamins. Today, he carried a box of baby clothes they'd ordered together, his face lighting up when he saw Alison on the porch. How are my two favorite people this morning? He asked, climbing the steps. Someone's been doing somersaults since dawn. Alison replied with a tired smile. I think he's running out of room in there. Martha appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. Then it's a good thing you're both here. Those birthing classes start today, don't they? They had signed up for evening classes at the local hospital, another step in their careful journey back to each other. Isaac had researched every birthing center within 50 miles before choosing this one, wanting the best care possible for Alison and their son. The days fell into a gentle rhythm. Mornings were spent preparing the nursery at Isaac's house, now their future home. They painted the walls a soft sage green and assembled furniture together, taking breaks when Alison needed rest. Isaac insisted on doing the heavy lifting, but Alison supervised every detail, from the placement of the crib to the arrangement of tiny clothes in the dresser. During afternoons, they often sat in Martha's sunroom, reviewing their birth plan or reading parenting books. Isaac took detailed notes during their discussions, determined to be prepared for every possibility. I never thought I'd see you this invested in baby care, Alison commented one day, watching him highlight passages about swaddling techniques. Isaac looked up, his expression serious. I want to do everything right this time. Both of you deserve that. Their birthing classes became evening highlights. They practiced breathing exercises together, with Isaac supporting Alison's back as she learned positions for labor. The instructor noticed their dedication, often using them to demonstrate techniques for the class. Remember, she would say, birth partners are essential for comfort and encouragement. You're not just observers, you're active participants in this miracle. Isaac took these words to heart, massaging Alison's shoulders during practice contractions and memorizing pressure points to help with pain management. Other couples in the class smiled at his earnestness, but Allison saw the love behind every action. Late one evening, as they finished reorganizing the baby's dresser for the third time, Allison felt the first real contraction. It was different from the Braxton Hicks she'd experienced before, stronger, more purposeful. She gripped the edge of the changing table, breathing through the sensation. "Isaac," she called out, her voice steady but urgent. "I think it's time." Isaac appeared in the doorway instantly, his face a mixture of excitement and concern. "Are you sure? You're not due for another 2 weeks." "Pretty sure." She nodded, feeling another contraction building. "This feels different." With remarkable calm, Isaac helped her to the car, already packed with their hospital bag. He called Martha on the way, his free hand holding Allison's as she worked through each wave of pain. The hospital welcomed them efficiently, checking Allison's progress while Isaac filled out admission forms. The contractions intensified steadily, and Allison found herself grateful for all their preparation. Isaac knew exactly where to apply pressure on her lower back, when to offer ice chips, how to help her find comfortable positions. Hours passed in a blur of motion and intensity. The labor room's soft lighting created a cocoon of intimacy as they worked together through each contraction. Isaac never left her side, his quiet encouragement anchoring her through the hardest moments. "You're doing beautifully," he whispered, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth. "I'm so proud of you." Martha arrived shortly after midnight, bringing her peaceful presence and years of maternal wisdom. She took turns with Isaac, supporting Allison through the increasingly powerful contractions. As dawn approached, the moment they'd been waiting for arrived. With one final tremendous effort, Allison brought their son into the world, the room filled with his strong, healthy cries as the doctor placed him on Allison's chest. "Hello, little one," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We've been waiting for you." Isaac stood beside them, completely overwhelmed by the sight of his son. When the nurse offered to let him hold the baby, his hands trembled as he reached out. Cradling their tiny boy close to his chest, Isaac's composure finally broke. Tears fell freely as he gazed at his son's perfect features. "He's beautiful," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. "Absolutely beautiful." Allison watched them together, her heart full to bursting. The wounds of their past seemed to fade away, replaced by the pure joy of this moment. Their son had his father's dark hair and her delicate nose, a perfect blend of them both. Isaac sat carefully on the edge of the bed, still holding their baby, looking into his son's alert eyes. He spoke softly but with deep conviction. "I promise you," he said, "that I will always be here for you. You'll never have to wonder if you can count on me. I'll be the kind of father you deserve, present, loving, and completely devoted to you and your mother. That's my solemn vow to you, little one." The early morning sun began to peek through the hospital window, casting a warm glow over the new family. Martha stood quietly in the corner, her heart overflowing with gratitude as she watched love heal what had once been broken. The baby stretched in his father's arms, making tiny contented sounds. Isaac carefully transferred him back to Allison, who welcomed their son against her heart. Together they marveled at every perfect detail, his tiny fingers, his rosebud mouth, the way his eyelashes fluttered as he dozed. "Thank you," Isaac whispered to Allison, his voice full of wonder and reverence. "For what?" she asked softly. "For giving us another chance. For bringing this miracle into the world. For everything." Their son slept peacefully between them, unaware of the profound joy and healing his arrival had brought. As the morning light grew stronger, it illuminated 3 hearts now beating as one family, bound together by love, forgiveness, and the promise of new beginnings. The late summer morning dawned bright and clear, perfect for a wedding. Martha's backyard had been transformed into an intimate garden sanctuary, with white chairs arranged in neat rows and yellow roses woven through a wooden arch. The air held the sweet scent of blooming flowers and fresh-cut grass. Allison stood in Martha's guest room, adjusting her simple ivory dress. It wasn't the elaborate gown from Isaac's almost wedding months ago. This one was soft and flowing, perfect for a backyard ceremony. She cradled their 6-week-old son, James, watching his peaceful face as he slept. "Are you ready, dear?" Martha appeared in the doorway, her eyes bright with happy tears. She wore a lovely blue dress and carried a small bouquet of yellow roses matching the arch outside. "More ready than I've ever been." Allison smiled, carefully transferring James to Martha's experienced arms. The baby didn't stir, completely content in his grandmother's embrace. Outside, Isaac stood beneath the rose-covered arch with Pastor Brooks, his hands clasped nervously in front of him. He wore a light grey suit that matched the casual elegance of the day. The small gathering of their closest friends and family sat in comfortable anticipation. No photographers, no press, just genuine love and support. When the soft music began playing, Isaac's breath caught in his throat. Allison appeared at the back of the aisle, carrying a simple bouquet of yellow roses. She walked slowly toward him, her face glowing with joy and certainty. Their eyes met and held, sharing volumes of unspoken understanding about the journey that had brought them to this moment. Pastor Brooks smiled warmly as Allison reached the arch. "We gather today," he began, "to celebrate not just a marriage, but a testimony to God's incredible grace and the power of forgiveness." In Martha's arms, baby James slept peacefully through the ceremony, occasionally making soft cooing sounds that made the guests smile. The sun filtered through the rose petals above, casting a gentle golden light over the scene. When it came time for the vows, Isaac took Allison's hands in his. His voice was thick with emotion as he spoke. "Allison, I stand here today humbled and grateful. God used you to save me from a path that would have destroyed everything good in my life. You showed me what real love looks like, patient, forgiving, and brave enough to speak truth even when it hurts. I promise to spend every day trying to be worthy of the second chance you've given me. I will love you and our son with everything I am, putting God and family first always." Tears slipped down Allison's cheeks as she responded. "Isaac, when I came back into your life, I thought I was there to save you. But God had a bigger plan. He was saving both of us, healing old wounds and building something beautiful from our broken pieces. I promise to love you faithfully, to trust in God's plan for our family, and to always believe in the good man I see in you." Pastor Brooks led them through their rings and final promises, his voice carrying clearly across the peaceful garden. "By God's grace and the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Isaac, you may kiss your bride." Their kiss was sweet and tender, accompanied by soft applause from their guests. Martha stepped forward with James, who had awakened just in time to be part of the family's first embrace as husband and wife. Isaac took his son carefully, holding him between himself and Allison as they shared another kiss. The reception was simple, cake and punch served on Martha's patio, with comfortable conversation and genuine laughter. As the afternoon sun began to lower, guests gradually departed with warm hugs and blessed wishes. Finally, Isaac and Allison found themselves alone on Martha's front porch, settling into the old wooden swing. James slept contentedly in Allison's arms, while Isaac's arm wrapped protectively around them both. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant shades of pink and gold, a fitting end to their perfect day. "I can hardly believe we're here," Isaac murmured, pressing a kiss to Allison's temple. "Sometimes I think I'm dreaming." Allison leaned into his embrace, watching their son's peaceful face. "You know," she said softly, "when I first discovered everything about Veronica and came to warn you, I truly thought I was there just to save you from making a terrible mistake." "You did save me," Isaac agreed. "But that's not all that happened." Allison continued, her voice gentle with wonder. "God used that moment to save both of us. He took our broken past and transformed it into this beautiful family, the one we were always meant to have." The setting sun cast long shadows across the porch as they sat together, 3 hearts beating in perfect harmony. Their journey had been marked by pain and redemption, loss and restoration, but most of all by a love strong enough to overcome every obstacle. In the quiet of the evening, they held each other close, grateful for second chances and the infinite grace that had brought them home. "Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart."